So let's work on another example. So here we have a class called excdemo, and in this class we have an integer array n that stands for numerator and another integer array d that stands for denominator. Both arrays have 6 members. So for the d, I spaced the members out so you can actually match them to each other. And then we have a for loop where we actually loop over all the elements of n array, and then what we'll do is we're going to divide the numerator by the denominator here in this line. So what you can tell is that when we try to divide something by 0, that's an exception and the program is going to break. So let's go ahead and run this file, see whether the program fails or throws an exception or not. If it does, where exactly? So let's compile our program first. So this is good, and let's run. So here our program failed, which also means that it threw an exception. However, when starting this loop, so the first loop passes without problem. For 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. So first 2 loops went without any problem. However, in the third loop, when we try to divide 16 by 0, that's where it threw an exception. So what it says exception in the thread main, and it is an arithmetic exception. It is a divide by 0 type of exception, and it happened exactly in line 9. However, notice that this is where program break. However, the first 2 loops went on without a problem. It's just the third one failed. So let's go ahead and put this line of code in a try block so we can prevent the program from crashing. Alright, so I'm going to put this line of code inside the try. Then I'm going to catch with an arithmetic exception. Let's make it E. So the E is an object of arithmetic exception class. You can name anything you want, but I'm going to use E for short. Then I'm going to print a message saying that something like can't divide by 0. So here we put the line of code that might throw an exception into a try block, and then we catch an arithmetic exception if it occurs. So let's see what this program does. So I'm going to save it first, and we need to compile, and now we're going to run the code. So here we can see that again the first 2 loops work without any problem. They did not throw exception. However, when loop 3, when it passes, when n I is 16 and d I is 0, it actually tried to divide a value by 0 and it threw in an exception, and then we caught the exception and then printed can't divide by 0, so the program did not crash, and we went on continue with the rest of the loop. Here's what you can see. First 2, no problem. The third loop can't divide by 0, that's an exception, and the fifth one threw an exception, and the 6th one went on without any problem. So we can, let's say, put a print statement here, and we can say loop complete. So we'll know that the program is going to end without any problem. Here you go. So loop complete. Now let's try to catch another exception with the same loop. So here I'm going to add 2 more values to my n array. I'm going to say 256 and 512. So what will happen now? So the loop will gonna continue and then go all the way to the end of the N array. However, notice that we don't have enough values in the D array. So at some point, D will go index out of bounds. So let's catch this type of error as right, so we're going to catch that type of error with the index out of bounds exception. And then how we want to handle is we could print something that says no matching element found. So let's test this one. So we need to recompile first and let's run. So here what you can see is the last two passes through another type of exception. The reason for that is when we try to access n sixth, it didn't create a problem. However, there's no D6, so this line here threw another exception, and we were able to catch it with the index out of bounds exception. As we saw in the other examples, we can actually use a superclass exception to catch both arithmetic and index out of bounds exception. So I'm going to delete those two specific exceptions. Then I'm going to use the superclass exception, that is the superclass of both the arithmetic exception and index out of bounds exception. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say print e dot get message. So we'll be able to print the specific message that caused by the type of the exception. So let's try this first. So again, we had a divide by 0. That's an official message for the divide by 0 exception, and that happened twice. We also have two index out of bounds exception. The first one, index 6 out of bounds for the length 6, and index 7 out of bounds for the length 6.